This is the weirdest, most pleasantly surprising metal casting resin I've ever tried. It's called X-Wax by Bluecast, and it makes no sense to me. It has an extremely high wax content, so it behaves like a wax resin, but also it doesn't behave like any metal casting resin I've ever tried. Does that make sense? Of course it doesn't. Let me explain. Investment casting resins are different from normal casting resins. If you try to burn a plastic resin, it'll leave like ashes and chunks and crud behind, and that'll ruin the metal casting. Traditionally, jewelers use wax for this. The wax, you make the patterns out of wax, and they melt out or burn away nice and clean. Burnout resins do a similar thing, but you can print them in a normal home resin printer. This is great for anyone designing like jewelry, for example. You can design jewelry in Blender or ZBrush, and then just print it out and sprue it up and burn away, and there you go. Kind of cool, right? Burnout resins also often include wax. If you burn one of those resins, sometimes it'll just run right out, and you can see the wax melting out, and it kind of smells like birthday candles. Don't breathe it in. Some other resins don't include any wax. They use, I don't know, witchcraft or something. The difference I've noticed is that the wax-free resins tend to be more durable, and they often print a bit faster. They print a little more like normal plastic resins, actually, but I'm told wax burnout resins can burn away a little bit more easily, especially if something's very thick. The thicker and chunkier a thing is, the higher the wax content, the easier it will burn out. That's what I've heard anyway. Also, the higher the wax content, I've noticed the more brittle the final piece tends to be. I've never tried Bluecast products before, so I could be wrong with them, but the cheaper products tend to follow this trend, at least that I've noticed. So where does X-Wax fit? Well, this is crazy high wax content. It's like not 30, 40, whatever. It's like 80+%. It's so much wax that they don't call it resin. They call it printable wax. So given what I've just said, it should have no problem burning away nice and clean, right? That's correct. In fact, I can use my little cheap battery operated spruing gun and burn these printing supports away nice and clean. It's not leaving like ash or chunks or even a residue behind on the spruing pen. Seems pretty wax-like to me, and I'm a big fan of wasting battery life, as much as the next guy, but I got an extra print here and a blowtorch, so let's see what happens. It started on fire, kept burning off until all the solid stuff was gone. This was supposed to be a ring, by the way. I forgot to check the sizing, and it ended up being like 2 inches across. Well, it gave me something to start on fire, so it's not a total loss. The liquid that came out stained this fire brick, and a whole lot of blowtorching was required to get rid of that. But it left no ashes, no hard chunks. It all burned right away. Didn't leave as much of a puddle of wax as I was expecting, but it didn't leave burning ashes either. I think the super high wax content is why this is acting so weird. I couldn't even get it out of the bottle when I got it. I'm out in a garage, and this is Wisconsin. This came to me, a month or two ago or so, and it was basically solid in the bottle. You have to warm it up to get it out of there. I stuffed it under my shirt for like half hour. That seemed to work. Pouring it out of the bottle was also really weird. It has like this waxy sludge consistency, and they recommend you preheat the resin because obviously you need heat to get that wax to melt a little bit. I'm using a Saturn IV Ultra 16K for this, and it has a vat heater, but most importantly, it's got a preheat setting. Plenty of printers these days are coming with heaters. You don't need this one exactly. It makes things a little more easy, so just keep that in mind. You could say I was kind of nervous how this would come out. Shockingly, it prints great. It needs a longer exposure time than wax-free burnout resins, way more than standard ABS-like resins, like several times longer, but the print quality is insanely good. To be honest, pretty much every casting resin I've tried prints pretty well once you get the settings right, but this one was really easy to get right, and it comes out looking great. This is, however, the only burnout resin I've tried that leaves this weird foam on the build plate when it's done. No idea what all that's about, but it prints really nice. They recommend using a 2-stage cleaning process with alcohol. What that means is you take it, you wash it in alcohol, you can use dirty alcohol, then dry it off, and then wash it in clean alcohol. I already do that with everything, even plastic resin, so it wasn't a big issue for me. The important part here is I used a uniformation wash station for the second wash. The uniformation wash station uses ultrasonic cleaning. It doesn't have a spinning fan blade. I've noticed some burnout resins don't clean up very easily, and the ultrasonic wash can help that. Though this stuff coming out of the first station looked very clean. I didn't see a ton of uncured resin all over it. They recommend you dry these prints off with compressed air. And these do something cool that I've seen in other wax resins. They change color. They go from kind of a desaturated dark purple to white. I have 2 prints here, one that's all the way through the clean process, and the other one that was just dunked in an initial alcohol bath. The white one got 2 washes and a lot of dry time. I assume the change to white is a good way to visually indicate that you did a thorough enough job washing it. You don't need to post-cure this. You just print it, wash it, and you're done. Okay, so a lot of that sounds like wax casting resin. Why did I say this doesn't seem like a casting resin? Well, it isn't super brittle. Quite the opposite. This stuff is less brittle than normal plastic resin. It's super soft, super light, super flexible. And somehow you get super sharp details, and it's just not fragile. It's no tenacious resin. I wouldn't want to hit it with a hammer, but it's really, really flexible. If I tried this in a normal, like a standard resin, this thing would break right off. ABS-like resins, some of them can't handle this either. That means your delicate, like jewelry details with little protruding things aren't going to shatter the instant you sneeze while holding it. That might not seem like a crazy detail, but it makes handling the prints themselves much easier. So to test this stuff, I printed up a bunch of minis and some jewelry. Like usual, sprued it up in a small perforated flask. This stuff, being wax, seems to bond to the sprue wax really easily. Maybe the easiest of all the resins I've tried, though I can't quantify that. No trouble getting my blue cheap sprue wax to wet to the stuff. The main issue I had was keeping my caffeine-ridden hands from just shaking the whole time. In addition to the minis, I printed an open source ring and I'm adding in a couple of sets of tulip earrings for my wife. They're a surprise. No one tell her. Just kidding. By the time this is done being edited, she's gonna have them. These have the ear wire molded in, and I would be really nervous to print these in a more brittle resin. I personally am not a jewelry maker, but I was recently reminded by my wife that I have a wife who is a fan of jewelry, so I'll give it a shot. For those of you wondering, I'm using Prestige Optima investment plaster. I have not had a problem with this stuff beyond spillage because I'm a bit clumsy and I'm using a mixing cup that's far too small. Here's a pro tip for this stuff. When you figure out the amount of plaster with the amount of water that you need, write that down in Sharpie on the box of plaster with the size of flask you're using. You'll never have to do math again. Bluecast says this is compatible with any burnout schedule, and Prestige publishes this schedule for Optima, so it's probably a good idea to just use that. On the other hand, I've used fast burnout for other resins, and Bluecast did say this was compatible with all burnout schedules. For burning out, I'm using this cheap Vevor burnout oven. It's pretty simple, it's pretty cheap, it works for these small flasks. I reviewed this recently, gotta say it's pretty functional for the price. Time will tell how long it lasts, obviously, but I haven't had an issue with it so far. Usually I just test this stuff with lower temperature metals, but this time I want to give like earrings to my wife, so I wanted to use something a little bit nicer. I'm using ancient bronze casting grain for this from Rio Grande. Ancient bronze is 90% copper, 10% tin. It's one of my favorite alloys. When you think bronze age, this is the bronze they're talking about. There's so many different kinds of bronze and brass and stuff out there, and they're all very different. I just like this one because history, I guess. It's generally not the one used for jewelry for a number of reasons. It's very easy to cast other than the temperature needed, flows well, it doesn't shrink too bad. It looks really cool, but it does tend to come out of molds looking all crusty. Here is where my lack of jewelry making experience comes to play. I don't have any nice jewelry finishing equipment. No vibration tumbler, no fancy foot operated grinding tool with a bunch of different fittings. All I got's an Ace Hardware Dremel kit. The castings looked really good, but during dremeling, I ended up launching the open source ring across the room a few times. It got really screwed up, so that's going back in the melt pile. You probably can't see how screwed up it is from here, but trust me, it's got some nicks and dings, and cutting the sprues off, I cut into the side of it a little bit. Whoops. First up, the earrings. I got two sets, a small and a large. They look pretty good. The ear wires clearly burned out all the way and filled properly, which is a good sign. If I had some skill, some time, proper equipment, I could get these all glossy and beautiful. If you really want these to stay glossy though, you need to do something to the bronze. Ancient bronze will turn your skin a little green, and it'll change color and kind of patina a bit in contact with your skin for a long period of time. You can always patina them intentionally if you want, and then there's coatings and stuff, or just use a different alloy. That's what most people do. I'll have to do something to clean this up a little better. If you got any tips, leave them in the comments below. Okay, now the minis. I chose these two models from One Page Rules because of the fine details, especially this alien guy with the robot lizard on the flag. There's only one flaw, and that's the alien's swords. They're extremely thin. They're long, they printed fine. They burned out, I assume. They filled with metal just fine. I think when it was cooling, it broke due to metal shrinkage. I'm seriously shocked they printed in the resin at all. They are like translucent thin. The human guy though, he cast okay. He doesn't have any small details or ultra long, thin, skinny stuff. Metal casting isn't just about getting the right equipment or the right resin, using the right temperatures on things. You also have to design the part with keeping in mind that the metal's gonna shrink when it solidifies, right? And these things were never intended to be metal cast at all. You can compensate a bit by like how you sprue the thing, what temperatures you use, your metal choice, find one that doesn't shrink so bad. But I didn't feel like doing any of that. The detail though is fantastic. The tiny robot lizard thing on the flag even has fully formed whiskers and nostrils, and they look great. This means 3 things to anyone who wants to use this stuff. First, it prints very easily. These minis were pre-supported. They were designed for like ABS-like resin in a standard printer, and I made no changes to print them in this resin, and it printed just fine. All the details came out very sharp. It printed great. Second, the tiny fragile bits don't break off when you're handling them. That helps a ton when it comes to like actually making stuff with this resin, because you are like touching it for part of the process and you're spruing it up. And if every time you slip a little bit, you snap off a little prong on a ring or a dude's finger or something, that makes the resin harder to use. Not a problem with this stuff. Third, long skinny details have no trouble burning out. It will leave you a clean mold for the metal to go into. So what's the catch? If you have your printer out in a garage like me in the north, you're gonna want a heated vat or some kind of heated printer, or at least a heated space. And second, it's not the cheapest resin out there. Bluecast stuff tends to be kind of expensive. I assume this is no different. The alien with a flag model on it would cost 12 cents in an ABS type resin, that's model and supports. About $1 and a cheaper burnout resin with this, it's $1.63 for that one 3D print. Same goes for this robot guy. That's probably about $1.50 worth of resin. This is probably a little bit less. All of the stuff that I have cast here, the 2 minis, the 2 sets of earrings, the open source ring, took about $4.43 worth of this resin. That includes supports. Specialized resins always seem really expensive per bottle, but you got to keep in mind, you don't print one thing and then throw the rest of the bottle away, right? You want to check out how much resin you're actually using per thing you're making. So when it comes to like jewelry, the resin cost is very little considering the plaster cost, the energy cost, the time cost, the metal cost, right? So it's kind of a small part of the whole picture there. But if you're used to buying $20 bottles of cheap plastic resin, you're going to get a sticker shock. If you do want to check it out, and I suggest you do, there's a link to their store down below. Let me know below in the comments what you would make with this stuff. I'm probably going to make mostly more jewelry for my wife. Happy casting.